Dum 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 dum.
Hello, hello.
Hey, hey,
Make sure we
What's
got
cracking?
everything.
hey.
I gotta make
Moth
sure
is lost.
we're actually live.
Are we real right now?
We are for real.
For
Okay.
real?
Welcome everybody to the Diagnostic Discussion After Dark, the Tech Talks Part Deuce.
Deuce.
I do.
Can't
We've
say
got
that.
4 special guests because we're going to consider DeFazio a special guest for today.
Hey.
He is
So
special.
we got a few announcements. We have something really cool that we were given the opportunity to announce slash I don't know how to say this without sounding like we're giving. Yeah, we're gonna bear this. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Good job, Brent. Good job, Brent. That was really good.
I said share, but we can say bear.
Oh, share. Okay,
Are we gonna bear? Are we gonna bear it all
Whatever.
tonight?
Yeah, we're
Scared
gonna
of,
bear
I'm
all
scared
of it.
of bears.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that kind of party.
Bears
Yeah.
scare me.
Well,
It's
you know,
always that kind of party here. It's
a
always
little off because I had to run to only find my Train by Text T-shirt rather than my polo.
Okay.
Well, you know. But so yeah, we've got a couple special guests today, and so a really cool announcement. I think are we gonna lead off with the announcement, right? That's how we're gonna go.
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
do
Let's
it.
go nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it, and then we'll do it, and then we'll have our special guest talk. We'll finish up the tech talks. We'll have part 2 of that.
Okay, cool. All right. I guess Keith, you want to go?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there you go.
So last night, obviously, I had a live stream. I know some of the people are going to probably end up being here today, but for the people that haven't been, our company that we've been working with, Opus IVS, has approached Train by Text separately, and also made an offer that's available to us and our subscribers. Go ahead, Chris. Tell them the details of the.
So basically, what it is they came to us with an offer, and that offer is anybody who's watching this stream. If you click the link that's in the little about section, follow that.
Yep.
Yeah, the description. You get a free week of unlimited tech support for domestic and Asian vehicles, which is actually a really awesome offer if you think about it. If you've ever tried tech support or ever thought about something like that, and basically it's your link to go speak to Keith because he will answer the phone personally.
Hey.
Ooh. Man, I'm all over that.
And well, yeah, exactly. It's like having your own little what's Identikeith phone number. But it's actually a really cool offer for those of you who haven't really tried something like tech support or a line like that, or really look down on something like that. It's actually a really cool thing because not everybody can know everything about a car. It just doesn't happen. Nobody's perfect. Nobody knows everything. And honestly, we have all spent a lot of time going the wrong way on a vehicle only to get turned around and just get our asses beat on a diagnosis. How awesome would it be to have just make a phone call, spend 5-10 minutes on the phone, and then you got yourself a test plan and a direction to go in. It's it's a moneymaker, really. And you get
by people who've actually been out there and working on the cars, not some person that sits there and picks up this job from like a college and says, yeah, I know all about cars, and they walk you through a flow chart from beginning to end.
yes,
That's
like
not what we do.
like certain companies, yes.
So you
they
used
do
to
that.
work on cars, Chris?
Believe it, about 50 pounds ago, I used to work in cars back when I could fit in them.
Oh, wow.
Hey, man, I resemble that remark.
Tommy, you work on vans now.
He's a sprinter. He's a sprinter tech now.
Yeah,
Oh, Lord.
Oh, don't say that.
So we everybody on that support line has real world experience, and a lot of them, or most of them, have at least 10 years in a dealership, and a lot of guys have multi-car brand experience, like Keith and myself, who can talk to you about anything and help you out with anything. And honestly, something like that, a service like that is invaluable, because honestly, you can bill yourself as somebody who knows everything, but honestly, you don't. And so a lot of people have used it. Like there's some people here that have used that service. Perkins, I've spoken to you a couple times.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I I was doing a shop had put a used transmission in a Mechatronics VW. Um, it was SVM locked because they tried to start the car and a whole bunch of stuff with this used tranny in there. And I went through and built a test plan on Otis, and I had no idea which of the 55 freaking things had to be done. And I really didn't want to spend 3 hours doing them all. So I have the Drive Pro. So I put in a support ticket with my Drive Pro, just because I could quickly identify the vehicle. And then because Opus supports all tools, Chris logged into my particular Otis. So I also have a factory subscription, Otis, and Chris logged into that. And that's what I thought was the best part, was they were willing to offer tech support for something besides their tool. Like, they sold the Drive Pro, but they also offered support. He was like, if you got an Autel or whatever, we're going to log in, we're going to fix the car. So he walked me through the test plan on Otis, because I am not that familiar with Volkswagen Otis. Not by any means in comparison to how I am with my aftermarket tooling. So he walked me through the test plan on Otis on how to build which functions we had to do to release the SVM lock, but also code this transmission correctly without doing everything. So, and then the car was out of gas, and my wife
I was gonna
had
say,
to figure it out.
did you want to finish that one real quick? What's wrong
Yeah,
with
so
that
we
car?
finished everything that wouldn't start, and me and Chris are arguing over what should be, or deciding which one of the 5 security things could have gone wrong when my wife looked over and said, it's out of gas.
And that's why.
And she was right.
Wow. And I know, Brent. I've spoken to you once or twice. I remember it was a sunroof on a Volvo. That was just, it made 0 sense.
Sunroof on a Volvo, and I think your Volvo guy sent me some diagrams that I didn't have access to in aftermarket, which was nice. And it was kind of resistance values for the sunroof switch, which kind of helped me move on to the next step. So that was cool. The other thing is, you helped me to code a module on a VW, I think, Passat or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because you were mobile that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you were at a shop, and I remember this. Yeah. And we had to code. I forget what we had to code. It was like an ABS. I think it was an ABS module, something like that.
Yeah, you remember Craig also helped me out. He actually logged into my Auto and helped me with 04A4.
Yeah.
The ABS was junk, and I couldn't find the original coding.
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, you don't. I think a lot of people's worries and trepidations about using a support service or a helpline. It's a lot of ego. But once you get past that and you realize you can use something like this to make you money, it makes perfect sense. When I go and talk to people about this, and they're worried about spending money on support, and the support that we provide, it's $299 a month, and people go, oh my God, that's a lot of money. I'm like, listen, wait, what's your labor rate? And it's generally between 120, 140 an hour. I'm like, you're going to tell me within a month's time, you haven't spent 3 hours going the wrong way in total. And I can't find anybody that said, no, I've always gone the right way. Just in one, it makes you money if you use it correctly.
As a mobile guy, I made a mistake. I did not abuse my privileges enough to sit there and actually take advantage of the way some of these other guys do out there too. Having the service information, provided me, if I do my research for a car that I'll be going up against, these guys were willing to, they would have grabbed me the service information, had everything ready for me by the time I got to that car, and I would have had a game plan put together, before some of them. And that's another added feature to it, is the fact that, there's factory service information right there at the fingertips, and someone else there to help you sift through it all to find your way towards that solution.
The way I look at it too is make sure you use it right. It's definitely a valuable service, because it's basically like having a friend without having to harass your friend. I harass these guys probably all too much. I feel bad sometimes. I feel like you're taking them off making money themselves. So in this case, you subscribe to a service that you can use because you're going to need it sometimes, and that's fine. We all need some help from once in a while. The big thing is just use it right. Take the opportunity to learn something, like Keith was talking about, navigating OE service information. Maybe you're not that familiar with the OE service information, so that person on the other end of the line can screen share with you and kind of help show you how to navigate that service information system. That's just one example, but OE scan tools for the same way. or if your product, if like Keith Perkins was saying a moment ago, they offer support on everything that you own in your shop. It's not just a tool that they sold you, but they did sell you a tool. If they did sell you a tool, then it's a good opportunity to make sure that that you understand, which I think you guys do anyways. You kind of onboard people by walking them through, but use it right. It's not a silver bullet. It's an opportunity for you to learn.
Exactly. And when I used to, because I used to be a customer before I got on the line, and honestly, what I would do, I wouldn't go for the silver bullet, because I don't want a silver bullet, because I want to be able to fix the car right, by myself the next time, or faster the next time. So you don't understand, the people that you're on the phone with, they're experts in their field, and they're experts in that particular brand or whatever they want to speak about. Pull that information out of them.
Now, Chris,
You
when
can-
you're presented with a call from someone, do you typically give them a silver bullet, or do you have them do the appropriate test that you think needs to be done for their scenario?
I literally tell people, I had to train them, because I got people I call from. I go, listen, if you're looking for a silver bullet, you talk to the wrong person. I'm going to make you work.
That's right.
And I'll talk you through the thing. And I'm like, no, we're not going to tell you to check that wire. We're going to do this together. And I will sit there, and if time permitting, I will spend as long as it takes, and we will fix that car together.
Even if it just needs gas.
Even if it just needs gas, because as a mechanic myself, I need to see the car fixed. I can't. One of the things I hate is giving somebody some information and I don't hear back from it. Kills me. So I want to be there, and I want to hear the thing run.
Yeah,
it was great. Oh yeah, it's horrible.
Now, it sounds like it addresses something that I don't know if my terminology is proper, but pathing, and I think we've amongst ourselves, I think we've discussed this a little bit before about the issue. One of the issues with silver bullets is, how are you going to go next? How are you going to know next time how to get there? Pick whatever problem you want, but we'll pick on like a contaminated mass airflow sensor, and for whatever reason it's not coding, you get some symptoms, you go through whatever process you have to your skill level at that time, you don't figure it out, you go to a bullet resource, whatever that may be. Oh, okay, MAF could be a problem. I put the MAF in there, it fixed the car, great. Next time I get a car with those symptoms, I'll remember the MAF. But you never learned to look at the data in front of you, whether it was a scan tool or a scope or a meter or whatever it may be, that will take me in that direction. And it sounds to me, if I'm interpreting you guys properly, this is a solution to that. This is more than just learning that, hey, this is another probable cause. This is how next time you have a vehicle, regardless of make or model, to remember how I'm going to get to that, how I'm going to get there by myself, looking at data. How can I process this data to get a direction?
Exactly.
Essentially, you're taking the GPS away and handing them a map.
That's a good analogy.
So I don't want to miss something here though too, because Angel Garcia had asked the question earlier on. If I can get back up there, and he asked a silly question: do you need to have an AutoLogic to use the service?
This service right now that we're offering, no. You get the support, and we'll use whatever you got. Generally, the way that works is you have to purchase an AutoLogic and get the service. You'd speak to a salesman, which you would just contact with the link over there, and they could speak to you all about that. But generally, no. AutoLogic does not provide support without the tool, because the tool, being a fully functioning tool is one thing, but really it's our portal to you to get in to help you out. Because with that tool, it can do, you guys have seen it, can do so many things. But one of the greatest things is our ability to log into that tool and do factory programming, factory functions, and just basically do everything but turn the wrench. It's really awesome, because there's really, you can only describe so much over the phone. I mean, and we do things where we can log into your cell phone and we will look with you. But I mean, sometimes you really need to help get guided through a function in a tool, or just log in and get it done. And on top of that, I mean, the ability to program a car and not have to have it touched. I do it all the time. Like if somebody needs an ABS module programmed, or something like a steering lock or something like that, I just tell them, okay, turn the key on and call you back when I'm done. And they can go make money on brakes, which honestly, that's where you're making your money. You're not making your money on diagnostics. You're making your money on the other stuff.
Now, from someone who doesn't work for AutoLogic, I can tell you the reasoning behind that. So I did do tech support for over 180 stores back when I worked for a company. And I can tell you that every one of our stores had the same exact tooling. So trying to help someone diagnose something, trying to know if they had the tooling to do what they were asked to do, having standardization across it was key. So I think the big reason why they want you to have the Drive Pro ahead of time is because they know what the limitations of their tool is. They know that they can log in. They know what can and cannot be done with that tool. So that would be a big help.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I signed a 1-year contract for the tool, right? That's when you get the tool. It's a 1-year service contract you sign.
Yes. So when you do it, you pay for the first year support, and after that, you can cancel it. But honestly, if you use the support, why would you cancel it?
Yeah, if you use it
like
twice, if you use it once a month, it's worth it.
Yeah, and again, it's not even just for like silver bullets and stuff like that. I mean, just system information, how to find stuff. I mean, it's if you implement that into your shop, how do you not make money?
I did get asked if I could go do a programming event on a Porsche for a certain particular part, and I will say that they were able to tell me before I drove the hour to go do it that I would not be able to do it with what I had. So that saved me a ton of time because I was going to drive out there and go, well, I don't know, let me go find out. And talking to the Porsche specialist, he was like, well, what do you have? And went through everything, and he's like, yeah, you don't have anything that's going to be able to do it. This has to be a PWIS 3 only. So it saved me a lot of time on what I couldn't do also, which would have wasted a ton of my day.
And that's actually a good point too. And I don't mean to keep harping on all this because I know we got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but and let's be 100% honest. Not every tool does everything.
Oh no.
That's just that's the way it is. But wouldn't it be great to not waste 4 hours to find out you do not have the stuff in your shop?
Yeah, I think it would have been an hour drive. And then, let's see, I have an Auto, a Launch, an AutoLogic. I've got a slew of other weird things. I've got an ArtiPad top down. I've got all kinds of stuff I would have tried. So I would have probably spent an hour or 2 hours on it trying to figure out if I could do it.
How does the slew work for you? Do you like that tool?
It's great. Okay. It's kind of sticky, but it's great.
Well, that's really cool.
Thank
you. Thank you, AutoLogic, Opus IVS, for allowing us to share that. I want to make something known. We are very careful with making sure that that we do not. I mean, outside of Chris and Keith, of course, working for Opus IVS, they're obviously affiliated, but Trained by Texas General are not directly affiliated with anybody. We're not getting any kickbacks for this at all. We just support what's good for the industry. And like I said earlier, with a subscription like this, you can, like these guys have been saying, you can use it for service information. You can use it on a product that maybe you're not that familiar with, but make sure you use it right. Make sure you're learning about it. And like Matt says there, you know, allow them to give you the map and take away the GPS. I think that's a good analogy. So
I like that. Yeah.
So it's a week. Trust me, give it a shot. Just try. Put us to the test. If you don't like it, you don't like it, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna. You can't beat the price.
Cool. Well, I think we've been challenged by several people, but to make this 1 hour, haven't we?
Yeah, sorry.
It's not gonna happen.
So yes, let's move on. Let's
right.
what we're here for.
All right. So tonight we're going to we're doing our Tech Talk session. This is Tech Talks 2.0, not Deuce. It's not Tech Talks Deuce. It's Tech Talks 2.0.
It's Deuce. It's Deuce.
2.0.
Is it Deuce? And we have Matt here. He couldn't make it last week, but he's here with us today. And of course, Matt is the.
Yeah, why couldn't he make it last week? Come on.
He's the MC General.
Well, I heard Keith wasn't going to be on here, so.
Hey.
And I was gonna be on here, so.
He didn't have his Gone with the Wind curtains ready yet. So.
I think it was my wife's birthday, and
it was.
Oddly enough, it was frowned upon. Spend that time here.
It's a killjoy.
You should know better.
So we have Matt with us because Matt thought of it for the Vision High Tech Expo session, which we really enjoyed, as we said the last time around. This time we have Justin Morgan with us. Thank you so much for joining us, Justin, and Chris Groff as well. And they're going to do the tech talks. They're going to present their tech talks, the very same ones that they presented at Vision. So without further ado, who goes first?
We have one question first.
Okay.
Oz asked, how long is this 7-day trial going to be available?
How long is the 7-day trial going to be available?
7 days.
Is it 7 days from today, or is it 7 days from?
Yeah. How long do they have to sign up?
From what I understand, it's 7 days after signing up.
Okay.
But how long can you sign up? Like in 6 days from now, can he sign up?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are furloughed right now. A lot of people are sitting at home for a week. So if they sit at home for a week, they're not going to need this.
That's a good point. Well,
I just now thought of that. Sorry, I was like, that's probably what he's asking, because that's what I would be thinking if I was sitting at home for a week or two.
That's actually my thought.
That's actually a good question too. What I would suggest would be to contact. All right, visit the site and then contact. Just make contact. That's all you need to do. I'm sure they could work something out for you.
Or just message us. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And I would like to answer a question.
Yeah. What do you got?
Hey, Michael Nicholson. My background is not Brian's Cavalier.
It's similar.
It's similar.
I put my fire out.
His background is
2020.
No, his background is a representation of the entire state of New Jersey.
Oh, I thought that was Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
My fire got put out like immediately. So it's all good.
You're
and
not
the one on
trying
the car
hard
too,
if
huh?
you've never set a car on fire in your career.
We're just so thankful that you documented it for us.
I've set 2 cars on fire, but luckily none of mine were on video.
It's amazing how immediately you run around like this for a few seconds.
Fast the fat guy can run. Yeah. I think Matt should perform his role that he performed at Vision and be the MC.
Nothing. I did nothing.
Well, you were the punching bag, so it's okay.
He was one of many.
So was Rich. Rich got punched a little bit too.
That's all right. I can handle it.
Which one's Rich?
I'm still having to apologize to Jim Morton.
But yeah, I think we should present the Tech Talks. Matt, talk to us about the Tech Talks.
Just introduce everybody. Who do you got lined up to go first?
But they're going to do rock, paper, scissors.
You get to choose.
All right, yeah, Justin, Chris, rock, paper, scissors. 1, 2, 3, and go. And now 1, 2, 3. That's a gun. Gun wins. Chris goes first. Chris did a gun. Gun wins. That's what I'm saying. I'm going for Chris.
All right.
Yeah, and not to go into too much detail, but the idea was essentially how do we get a new crop of trainers to replace the old guys like Jim Morton and
and Rich Falco by that.
You couldn't leave it alone.
But if you're just thinking about breaking into presenting any kind of a course at expo like Vision, you're responsible for coming up with 3 to 4 hours of content and stand in front of a class or attendees of whatever number and carry that class for 3 hours. That can be very daunting. So how can we make it so somebody that's kind of interested in it, doesn't feel like they have enough material to carry 3 hours on their own, can get a chance to get up there in front of a group, make a presentation, maybe get a taste of it, like it, maybe get seen by some training managers or people that can put them in contact with resources to get into the game of training if they're interested. And it kind of became Tech Talks.
Hoping Marquest sees me.
Yep. Then so yeah, we put out the request for submissions, and we ended up with Richard Falco on there. So that's how bad it was. But in his defense, he put on one
kind of messed up because
I had one of the best presentations there were. But yeah.
It was easily one of the 6th or 7th.
It was top 6.
He's on the top.
Definitely top 6.
Top 6. That's for sure.
Man.
So who won the rock paper scissors?
Chris did rock paper scissors gun.
Chris did?
Well, like a true American, he pulled a weapon. So hey, I'm from Oklahoma. I would have done the same.
Chris had submitted some ideas, and you know, I had recognized his name mostly from Diag.net, and then on Facebook. So I pushed Sherry to let him in there, and it ended up being a really good idea.
Let me ask you, was it like a balance? I mean, that's where I first heard of Chris Groff was Diag.net. I mean, just his contributions. He was obviously highly intelligent and a forward thinker. Was it a balance of that, or the idea, or both? I assume I say balance. It was both. I assume you just kind of when you guys. I mean, there was probably a panel or a board or something that a committee or something that chose the presentations, right?
I think it was Sherry and I.
Oh, okay.
And Chris also slipped you $50, right?
I had $50 to slip.
Yeah, right. No, so saw his submissions, and then also just the reputation we felt from Diagnostic Network, and then again, more and more, seeing him more and more involved in different pages on or groups on Facebook. So felt like he was a shoe-in, could maybe balance out Bryn.
Plus, Chris is a freaking super genius.
Not at all. Just it was entirely too much free time.
But yeah, I don't want to hold off his presentation because it's very good. It's very cerebral. So have at it, Chris.
All right. Let's see what we got here.
I love your background, by the way.
Share screen. All right. Come on here.
Oh, you got the dark background just like I got. I love that.
Yeah, I can't stand the light background. It drives me nuts. All right, so the tech talk I did was on critical reading and analysis of service information. Basically, it's how to cut through all the unnecessary manufacturer engineering, crappy whatever you get from AllData, Mitchell, OE, whatever. It's how to get to the information you need to get the job done in the quickest amount of time without missing anything. So what is critical reading in general? I mean, it's evaluating the text. It's identifying any strengths, weaknesses, implications within that text. What's it really clear with? What's it doing terrible with and just confusing you? And what could all this information possibly mean? And then how can you put all that together for the big picture? You know, are you in AllData and you're reading DTC code set criteria? And if so, is that going to be enough to do it? Or are you going to have to start going into connector pinouts, flow charts, everything else? So these are all things you need to keep in mind, even when you're first scrolling through to figure out what you want to do. So there's a few different types of critical reading or a few different steps. First one is non-critical reading. You're going through word for word what is being said. You read it, you take it, you don't put any thought process into it. Generally, unless you're incredibly familiar with something and you're just brushing up on it, non-critical reading is a bad idea, and it's how you go down rabbit holes. Critical reading is when you reread that text to identify the information, find acronyms, useful data pid values, useful voltage specs, whatever it may be, and how and which of these are going to fit into whatever you're currently diagnosing. You know, if you're going towards, what was the one I just dealt with? P1319 or 1391 on a Chrysler today, and reading through it, it gave me a bunch of useless information. Or you have good information that's going to lead you where you want to go. You kind of have to work your way through that. And then your third step is critical thinking. You apply your previous knowledge, experiences, data to whatever current data you have, current symptoms, current complaint, and you determine its overall usefulness for what you're going through. Now, I have them as 3 separate steps. Honestly, as you start doing this, and a lot of people already do it without realizing it, you generally tend to do all 3 at the same time. So we got to look at a few things. We got to look at the what, the why, the where, and the how. What are we reading? Are we reading theory? Are we reading code set criteria? Are we reading a trouble tree, flow chart, Are we reading Identifix or some random forum on the internet? Each one of these is going to dictate how we actually interpret that information. If I'm on an OE website and I'm reading their theory and their code set criteria, I'm going to pay pretty close attention. I'm going to feel fairly confident it's correct. I'm reading a flow chart and they start telling me disconnect from the ECM and disconnect from the sensor and do an ohms test. As soon as I see something like that, I'm throwing it out because that's a waste of my time and a waste of the customer's money.
Goodbye.
Fixed databases, certain forums, you got to know the quality of the forum you're on. You know, Diag.net, that's a higher quality forum. Joe's Lawnmower Repair.org, not so good. You know, you got to use a little common sense when you're going through it. Why are we reading this information? What do we hope to gain? Are we brushing up on a system we've already learned about, we've gone to training on, we're familiar with? Or am I looking at what I have the other day, 2019 Lexus in the shop that I knew nothing about any of the systems on? You know, if I'm familiar with it and I just need to brush up, I can blow through pretty quick. I can look at the basics and not get too crazy. If I have no clue what's going on, I'm going to spend most of my initial hour diag in my research. Where are we reading it? I touched on that a little before. Is it the OE website, which in general is fairly trustworthy? I mean, OE will lie to you too. They make mistakes. Aftermarket information services, forums, social media, scan tool, fixed databases, be it intelligent or lack thereof, diagnostics, fast track troubleshooters, built-in tool information. And how are we reading this? Now, if we're going through, we're pressed for time, we're frustrated, customers yelling, bosses yelling, and we're looking for a silver bullet, you're going to skim all the important information and it's not going to make sense. And you're most likely going to make a mistake, which is, you know, the whole rush for time. Already understand the system. Okay. You understand the system. You're just not understanding what exactly is going on. You can kind of cut through line by line by line, data pid by data pid, input, output, whatever it may be, and really start to focus in on what you care about. If you know there's no way you have a mass airflow sensor problem and ECT is good, NOx sensor is good, and injector pulse width seems right, and the O2s are going right, because you understand that system and how they all interact, that's like 3, 4, maybe 5 paragraphs worth of information you can just throw out and save yourself the time and the aggravation. Or are you learning from scratch? You know, I get a lot of, for whatever reason, I get a lot of 2019, 2020 heavy duty trucks in that I'm not up to date on. And so those ones, 45 minutes, 50, 55 minutes of my hour diag is learning what's been updated in the systems and what I want to look for. 9 times out of 10, 15 minutes after that, you find your fault. Whenever you start reading through these service information, you really got to kind of break it down step by step. So first thing, major topics. What system are you concerned with? What fault? What direction are you going in? To steal from Jim Morton, what funnel? Which way are you kind of going to start with? So you start with your major topic, and then you start breaking it down into subtopics. Okay, I've got a drivability complaint. Great. What goes into drivability? We got ignition timing, we've got fuel timing, we've got air control. Which direction am I going in? Do I understand the system? If I understand the system, I'm going off a scan tool. So this particular part isn't super relevant right now. But if it's a system I'm not familiar with, I'll look at a little scan data, maybe some generic OBD2 stuff, and then I'll narrow in on which subtopic I want to look at. Once I get into that subtopic, say a fuel injection control strategy, first things I want to do, I want to get familiar with everybody's acronyms, their abbreviations, because everybody is different. You got ECM, PCM, GEM, TIPM, you know, FICM. It can drive you nuts. You think, you know, VSV, vacuum switching valve, on one vehicle is the same as a VSV on another, and it may not. So I literally take a pen, start jotting down these acronyms and what they mean to keep my head straight. And then I actually look at structure, and structure is kind of a goofy thing. But if service information is well written, it's presented in a specific order for a specific reason. So it's going to start with your general, and if written properly, it's going to slowly break down into each individual subtopic and subtopics beyond that to help kind of guide you there. Then we get into, is all our information available in one spot, or is it scattered all over the place? Like the last time I was on here, when Chris and I were doing that Nissan, that information was scattered all throughout the service info. I mean, we were pinouts here, communication charts here, this, that, this, multiple schematics just to trace the same wire. So you got to look at that, and do those locations make sense? It seems really silly, but if you're sitting there and like I've done many times, why on earth would they put this little piece of information in under ABS when it should be transmission or stability control or body control? There's probably a reason. It's probably relating to another system or to the system that it's actually referenced in a little more in depth than you think it is. And that's where we start drawing conclusions, and we can get into some interesting stuff. A big thing for me is the structure of the service info useful to whatever our personal needs are. At my shop, our primary subscription is Mitchell, and I don't like it. I struggle with it. I find it hard to use. It does have info that all data is missing at times, and vice versa. So I use Mitchell and All Data. I use OE. I was actually familiarizing myself with Kia OE earlier. But what it comes down to is, I don't care if Mitchell's got everything that you could ever possibly need. If that database and that structure doesn't make sense to you, find something that does. You know, I'd almost rather see somebody miss a little bit of information right off the bat and use some critical thinking to work their way through than struggle with a service information system that makes no sense and doesn't get them where they need to be. And there's caveats to that, and there is a definite need in today's world. I find week by week I use OE service info more and more, but it's something to keep in mind. Your primary service information should be something you feel comfortable using and you can get through well. Some of the tools and techniques for analyzing and reading the service info: notebook, paper and pen, whiteboard, write it down on the sidewalk chalk, tattoo it on your arm. I don't care what you do. Use something that will let you track your thoughts and let you track this information in a way that's consistent, repeatable, and becomes second habit. Because I think pretty much anybody can say that when they've gotten into something that's really been kicking their butts and they're not documenting and not really keeping track of what they're working on, they've backpedaled, they've retested the same system 2, 3, maybe 4 times, forgotten what their readings were. I mean, there's various things. So document it. Whatever way's easiest, do that. It's going to be a big help. Even if you're just sketching out stick figures to understand the system, it's going to make a world of difference. A few different ones. There's the mind mapping technique, which is drawing diagrams, generally time consuming, generally not something you want to do when you got a waiter and your boss is breathing down your neck. You can use the deductive order, which is, you take a generalized problem complaint and start assembling information that you think is going to be relevant and useful to you. We start out with the engine is running rich, or it's running lean, or, it's got a slight backfire upon tip-in acceleration. It loses power going uphill. It blows black smoke. These are all things that'll get us in a good, fast direction and cut out a lot of the research we may need to do. The inductive order is we work from a very specific fault. In our world, generally a DTC of some type. And we work backwards, step by step by each, until we find whatever level we need to be at for what's causing that DTC. So you can work from the big end of the funnel to the small, but you can also work from the small end of the funnel to the big as far as you need to go. It all depends on the situation, how repeatable the fault is, and so on. So this is just a very general diagram of a mind map. There's a million and one different ways to do this, but basically, you can go through here and different colors, different branches, and you start with different topics. So clarity, center, style in this case. So we'll say fuel injection, body control, transmission control, fuel pump control, rear differential. I mean, there's 50 million modules on everything now. You break it down how I do it. I break it down into each individual module and then break things out from there and then start connecting data PIDs, sensors that may communicate to multiple things, and just kind of build myself a very large and maybe scattered framework of what I'm doing. When I'm doing a system like this, I'm sitting at home and I'm learning something from scratch. I'm not doing this as I'm trying to do a quick, successful diagnosis. This was actually one I just threw in from the Nissan. This would be one way I did it to understand how something as simple as neutral inputs are being transferred all throughout the system to really be able to diagnose it properly. And even that took quite a bit of research to get into, but once you lay it out like that, it makes it a lot easier to diagnose where your faults may lie, which module is lying to another or not, whether you're looking at an input issue or a data communication issue, a module interpretation issue. I mean, drawing a picture sometimes is the difference between getting it in an hour or less or, spending a whole day on it.
Well, I was going to say that picture doesn't look like 8 hours worth of work.
No. No, but you should have seen the one I drew on the napkin beforehand. That was probably about 8 hours. So there's a few different types of reasoning. There's the deductive reasoning, which is what we know to be true in general, big end of the funnel, and we follow that funnel down to the bottom. And to steal from Jim, Brandon, and a million other guys who have said this, 85% of what occurs on a vehicle is the same across the board. I don't care if it's a freaking self-propelled manure spreader, a lawnmower, tractor trailer, a Kia, a freaking Volkswagen, whatever.
I just want to say before you move on, Brian is technically a self-propelled manure sprayer.
Totally beat me to that one.
But it's the laws of physics. I mean, you got Ohm's law, Kirchhoff's law, Boyle's law, Pascal's law. I mean, these things don't change. The only thing that changes is how a particular manufacturer names it or applies the principles of it to their own system. We have the inductive type of reasoning, which is basically flipping our funnel upside down and starting with a DTC or a hard repeatable fault that's there. It's glaringly obvious. It's super easy. And we take what we know to be true in this specific case, our data PIDs, our info, everything, and we work as far backwards to the most general principles until we find what we need. And this is kind of one of the ways you always look for the root cause of failure, right? I mean, we find a failed starter. We're just going to put a starter in and not volt drop the cables to the battery. We're not going to make sure connections are tight. We're not going to pay attention to the fact that we got so much oil running off of the freaking valve covers that it's burning the starter out every 2 months.
Nissan 3.3.
Every Ford pickup truck I've had in the last 3 months. It's just, yeah. I mean, we got to look at these different things. And then there's the abductive reasoning and fancy words. None of them really matter. It's the concept that matters. I just like putting names to things. We start with an observation or a set of observations. And we try to find the simplest and most likely solution for what we're seeing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Occam's razor, but it states
I'm familiar with Star Trek, so I know what that is.
Yes. It's an old mathematics principle that states the simplest solution is most generally the correct one. Whichever one has the least amount of variables is the most likely to happen. So this is where a lot of us get with well, at least what I run into. Very rarely do I have a hard, repeatable fault. And very rarely do I have one that's just completely off the wall. Generally, I have a customer complaint and some symptoms there. So I start with my observations. I do a walk around to the car. Do I have flat tires? Do I have dents, scrapes, scratches on it? Does it look like it's been parked under a tree for the last 6 years? Do I smell bad fuel? I mean, all small things. I get in the car. Do I see coffee spills down the center console that are going into, some electronics modules that might explain some of this?
How about maybe does the parking sensor go off every time you're standing in front of the Nissan?
Well, when you're in Staten Island, you just hit the button because it's freaking annoying. But yes, that's a prime example of not taking the time to look at the observations. And I mean, how much quicker would that have been if instead of trying to figure out why once in every 10 ignition cycles this car wouldn't start, and instead focused on the fact that why does the front parking sensor go off in park? I mean, something as simple something as simple as that. Hindsight's 2020, but as simple as that, using abductive reasoning and taking these observations about the overall state of the car and how things are working. It may seem goofy and unrelated, like a parking sonar beeping, and it can save you a ton of time.
And it can save you a ton of time also if you document that afterwards and save it somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm. This is just a little chart I had in there. Different types of reasoning, not super important. But so what are we looking for in information? So this one here is off of 2013 Chevy 2500 6-liter, just general GM service information. Actually, no, this might be a 1500. Doesn't matter. Displacement on demand system. Something I wasn't super familiar with a couple of years ago, and this is how I went about learning it. I'm going through my service info, and I see this nice picture here. I like pictures. I'm a visual learner. Makes it a lot easier. Instead of reading through 5, 6, 10 paragraphs worth of info, I've got this super nice diagram here. So my ECM for my cylinder deactivation solenoids control and all this. I'm looking at engine speed, vehicle speed, ECT, engine oil pressure, level, temp, brake, barrow, engine load, boom, 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 boom. That already gave me from, let's say GM gives me 65 data PIDs in the ECM for this particular vehicle. Right off the bat, I've cut it down to what? A fifth, a sixth of that, of data PIDs I'm concerned with. From there, just reading through their own chart, now I know, okay, my engine's been on for longer than 30 seconds, engine speed's this, engine oil pressure. Now I'm pulling even more data PIDs off, just bullet point by bullet point. I mean, I'm reading through, I'm looking for numbers and acronyms and what I already know, what I don't know. And so you can take a relatively complex system like displacement on demand and really narrow it down to a handful of data PIDs that are going to be useful or not useful to your diagnosis at that point. Have I met this criteria? Have I not met it? Why haven't I met it? And what I'll do sometimes is I'll go through and I'll actually take those specs and then put it on to my, I'm pointing like you guys can say it, but take those specs and put it onto the actual chart itself. Just makes it that much easier for me visually. And fuel shut off, heater performance, tip in, bump off, all different things. And what's kind of cool about these, when you see charts like this, it gives you a good explanation of how that system's working in general. But who would really think? I mean, we got right here, we got heater performance, which is literally the HVAC, the heater system performance. Why do we care about heater performance for a displacement on demand system? And that kind of starts to maybe give us a clue if we have a weird failure somewhere of how this control strategy works, how these different inputs work. Is that heater, if that's not performing properly, if the water pump's not doing well, if this isn't doing well, if AC is not working right, is that going to put an additional electrical load on the system? Is it going to put an additional engine load on it? Is that going to skew other things? I mean, there's a ton of information to be mined from even a chart as simple as this. And it can get pretty fun for some things. Just another example of some of the information you can find here. I mean, we got GM, super easy one to make an example of because they have a lot of great information there. I've got an entire chart of all my factory data PIDs, specs, parameters, what's valid, what's not valid, a description of it. Sometimes it's actually telling me how they calculate it. This to me, especially as I'm getting used to a new system, this is helping me decide what tool I'm using. Am I using a Snap-on? Am I using a Launch? Am I using the Tech 2? Do I know my tools? Do I know which data PIDs are available? Which functional tests are available? Which ones I need? Using this service info, I mean, it's a big deal. And it even comes down to, I'll scroll through these still, even on vehicles I know, and be like, no, I know the Tech 2 does this really well. That's what I'm going for. Or, I'm not sure. Let's take Snappy or take Launch. And that's the same Nissan. Nissan's got a great setup. Kia's fairly decent. It's just a good resource. It helps you get to where you need to be. Back to the Nissan again, cam crank signals. Do you know where to find them? Do you know how to use them? I mean, that's a super valuable piece of information there, especially if you're dealing with maybe not the best internet connection, anything else. Knowing that you have known goods like that, it's a way to go instead of going through fixed databases or Pico's database, Diag.net, IATN, Facebook, and say it's a variable valve timing system. So let's go back to our
because that day we couldn't get a known good because the Pico database just wasn't working where we were at.
Exactly.
So, so that helped.
And then we go back to looking at the quality and the source of the information we're looking at. So I can feel fairly confident that if an OEM has taken the time to give me a cam crank correlation waveform like that, it's probably going to be right. But say my OE service info didn't have that. Do I trust IATN more than Diag.net, more than Facebook? Is any one better than the other? Or does it really come down to who's uploading it where? If it's a VVT system, did they unplug the phasers? What were the conditions? I mean, there's variables we have to keep in mind, especially if we're looking at something that's way skewed from what we're seeing. Once again, another pinout chart, just showing you a chart as simple as this. You can go through, and we're looking, this is actually how everything's transmitted and received over CAN bus on that Nissan Armada. And we can actually start to break down from here, transmit, receive, who's talking to who's doing what. We have a communication fault. We've got sensor implausibility, whatever else. Is it a sensor implausibility, or can we use a chart like this to help us narrow down that, hey, this communicates with the instrument cluster directly, which then sends a CAN bus message out to the PCM, which then sends a LIN bus message out to the TCM. That you can cut out a lot of steps and a lot of unnecessary testing just by analyzing the service info and seeing what it's telling you, even if it's not blatantly telling you that. Goes back to this one. Here's yet another one of critical analysis of the service info. So we have the same wire here, the same red wire, pin 40 and pin 40 of the instrument panel on that Nissan Armada. Notice here, it's I forget, it's connector N31 and E152, I believe it is, or that may be the location. Either way, it goes here and it goes up to the ECM at that point to pin 102. And yet in a completely separate schematic that doesn't reference the other one, we go from our instrument cluster pin 40. We've got different connectors. We've got a different location. We've actually got two sets of connectors, and it goes down to our sonar control module. So right there, I mean, we have this is an OE diagram, and we've got a shared wire that's got to be coming out of the same pin of the control panel going two completely different directions with nothing referencing back to each other. So you got to look at it. You got to think about what's going on. You got to look at all the symptoms and kind of see, hey, does this make sense? Am I missing something? can I extrapolate from what I have to where I am, and does it make sense, or do I have a bunch of crazy jumps in it? It's hard to say. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's not a simple game. I get my butt kicked by service information, not daily, but more than I would like to. And it's just the nature of it. But I think it's really important to take the time to familiarize yourself. Be it if you only have Mitchell and you know you're never going to be getting OE service info at your shop, learn Mitchell inside and out. There's a bunch of great people in the chat. There's ones who, do a lot with Mitchell, everything else, put videos up. Reach out to them, watch their videos, learn your system. If you're using all data, learn all data. If you're at the dealership and you're using OE, I would hope you're pretty familiar with it. But if not, take the time, learn it a little deeper, poke around, click things. I can guarantee you're not going to break anything by just clicking buttons and seeing where you're going to go. It's a very important thing. It's something that's been able to get me through. I've gotten calls for steam engines, manure spreaders, worked on trash compactors. I've worked on fire trucks. I've worked, pretty much anything that has any kind of I worked on ice cream machines and HVAC units. It's all the same. If you can get service information of some type and you can start to, extrapolate from what you can get, there's not a thing in the world you can't fix when it comes to mechanical, electrical, whatever. Some of them you might struggle real hard, but sooner or later you will get there, and that information will be a big help for you getting there. And the more you learn, the more you document it. Like Keith said, you make your own little fixed database, you share with others. Everybody wins, and we all learn, we remember it better, and we move forward. So that's it. That's all I got on that.
Awesome.
Very cool. Thank you. This is one of the things that I was trying to encourage folks to submit for this, because I thought it was such a cool idea. And this is one that I was kind of thinking, the thing that separates really good diagnostic technicians from people that aren't is being able to really find that information that you need. And
critical
sometimes
reading of service information.
Developing a plan before you begin that plan.
I've struggled with it. I mean, I have friends that are by far better at it than me, and I'll tell them that I swear it's not in here, and they look at that as a challenge. They're like, "What system are you using?" I'm using Identifix and All Data and Mitchell, and they'll find it in my system just so they can show me. No,
it's nice to prove you wrong sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's what it boils down to. But it helps me to remind myself that it's probably there. You're overlooking.
My big thing for you, Chris, is I'm so glad that you're touching on the fact that you should be recording those fixes that took the extra effort building your own database, whether you share it or not. Just had this conversation, I think, with Cody Gaddy on his post, or somebody on his post previous today. The second most powerful thing a technician has is experience. That is the second most powerful tool we have. The first is this.
Hey, I'm sorry. The guy who's talking, can we have an intro of who you are?
Yeah, who is that?
Oh yeah. So
how'd he get here?
So I'll be the odd guy out. So some of you guys know me, some of you don't. I'm Justin, and I work for LMV Bavarian. Hey. So hey guys. So what I do is I work for LMV Bavarian, and we do tech support and training for independent shops that work on BMWs. I know, right? BMWs. They leak lots of oil. They leak lots of oil, and they suck up lots of water.
And they make lots of money.
They do make lots of money. I couldn't ask for a better job. Those cars are going to break well after the entire human race is gone. Those cars will still be broken. So,
not as bad as Land Rovers, but still pretty bad.
Yeah. You know what? We're getting close. The F63 TU and the N20, I don't know, man.
If 2020 was a motor, it'd be an N20.
Yes, but do BMWs break while sitting? No, only Land Rovers do that.
False. They do break. You just don't know about it.
I sold a Land Rover the other day, and I told the guy.
Did you apologize?
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
I said,
I hope you changed your phone number.
How much did you pay him?
No, man, I actually like that. I like that Rover that Brent had. That Rover was really
It was a sweet car, but I was lucky and fortunate, and I knew I had a timeline, right? It had to go before it cost me a lot of money. But I told the guy, I said, have you owned, I mean, I've had to turn away at least 12 or 13 people messaging me about this. Have you owned a Land Rover? Do you know anything about them? Because this is not the car for you. So I told this guy, I said, do you have a Land Rover? He said, no, but my brother does, and we know a lot about him. And I said, you understand that this car is good now, but you get 2 trips.
This is why we
Trip
can't
home.
be car salesmen.
Yeah, exactly.
Trip home, and you get the trip to take your wife to dinner in your new vehicle, and that's as much as I'll probably guarantee.
You gave him the taillight warranty.
Yeah, and then you need to hopefully there's room in the tow truck on the way home from dinner.
Yeah, Rovers don't even get a taillight warranty, Falco. They get the 10 feet or 10 seconds. But back to what I was saying to you, Chris, is, you know, I appreciate everything about your presentation, but my biggest thing is guys so easily forget sometimes the struggle that they had on a bay, and then 2 years later repeat the same damn struggle. It is so infuriating. So, you know, you talking about documenting and databasing that stuff, whether you share it or not, as long as you are able to remember it later and never repeat the same battle, you're ahead of the game. And that's huge for me. So
learning how to organize that data, right?
It's not like there isn't a bunch of free resources to use to do that.
Exactly, Matt. Yep. Exactly.
I can't organize it. I've talked to Justin about that too. Like, I can't find shit. I'll put it together in a folder somewhere, and it's gone forever.
You got
Just
so many
label
folders.
the folder then.
See, that's where you're messing up. You got to quit using the folder. You got to use the digital sticky notes on your desktop. And
I
you
got
have like
those. Those are great.
5,000 of them.
I have lots of those too.
Brent has no wallpaper. It's all just sticky notes.
Oh, nice.
All right. So, Matt, you want to MC some more?
Well, introduce Justin. Justin and I used to be good friends until he did this presentation.
My bad. That's all right. Jim Morton used to like me too, and
you'll see why.
So,
but yeah, Justin and I have been friends for a few years now, and he made the submission, a couple of different submissions, but this is the one we went with, and yeah, I think you'll get a kick out of it. He talks about the funnel as well, but in a slightly different manner as Chris did. So
yeah, and that's kind of what got me in trouble with Jim. So I apologize, Jim. I'm sorry. You're still my favorite.
I thought I was your favorite.
Yeah, what the heck?
Yeah, no, that's not true.
Wait, Brian, he told you he was your favorite? What the hell, man?
Everyone's favorite. I mean, come on.
Man, I feel like a cheap whore.
Which Brian is your favorite?
All of them.
Favorite pirate, bro.
I'm just saying.
I know
All
it's
right.
wrong.
So can everybody see my screen?
I can see it.
Jump.
Unexpected interference.
So when I introduced myself, I told you guys that we do tech support for independent shops that work on BMW. So, and that's exactly what we do. That's 90% of my day is doing tech support on BMWs for independent shops, and it gets rough. So,
which is why he has no hair.
100%.
Exactly.
Look, if you ever think that you are good at fixing cars, I want you to try to do it over the phone.
Lord.
You can't see the car, you can't smell the car, you can't touch the car. It is terrible. So what I'll do is I'm going to paint a picture for you. And luckily the guy on the other end of the phone that was doing the legwork on this car did a really good job documenting this stuff for us. So we'll go ahead and get started. So backstory, we've got a 2006 BMW 325, right? Customer complaint that is written on the work order is the vehicle will drive for a day and then won't crank the next. Then it'll be a crank no start and will try to die if you do get it running. Customer states when it runs, if you drive it more than 20 minutes, it randomly misfires and tries to stall. So a little bit further digging and we find out this vehicle's been at Matt Fanslow's shop across town for 5 weeks, and it's just had everything you can think thrown at it. It's had cam sensors, it's had crank sensors, it's had Vanos solenoids, ignition coils, plugs, it had some oil leak repairs, and a battery, none of which has fixed the customer complaint. And if anything, the misfire condition is now worse.
And on a side note, Matt has some parts he wants to sell.
Yes, he does.
Gently used parts.
It's a little
Yes, he
better.
Yeah,
A little better though.
Heavily discounted.
it's not even remotely better. So we're gonna check and advise, right? So
Listen, Matt, when I call Justin, I usually at least blame it on Carlos. All right, did you blame it on
I thought he was just going to help me out. I didn't know he was going to out me.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking out for you, buddy. So where are we going to start on this car, right? Because this is that intermittent nightmare, right? This is the worst day you've ever had, or as I'm referring to it, every phone call I've had since the start of COVID-19.
We're going to retrieve all 8,000 codes.
Yes. All right. So where are we going to start? So we're gonna start with confirm the complaint, right? That's what I do. Look, I know it's a BMW. It's always going to have codes, Brian. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I like to be surprised afterwards, right?
And when they don't have codes, get a different scan tool because that one's broken.
Yeah, if it doesn't have codes, it's because there's no battery in the car. Okay, I'm just letting you know, right? So first attempt, we start the car up. It runs, no issues whatsoever. We test drive. Bingo, Fanslow got it. No, it's still broken. It's still broken. No. So we test drive the vehicle. Almost immediately on the test drive, the car starts to buck and it tries to stall when we're coming to a stop. It's doing basically what the customer has told us, right? So we've got part one of our plan down. So in our next part, now we're going to scan for codes. Well, it's got them. It's got them all, right? Every code that you can think of.
All of the codes.
It has all of the codes, right? Just like it has all of the miles.
And all of the oil leaks.
No. Fanslow did fix the oil leaks.
Oh,
he just didn't get this right. So
temporarily.
Yeah, temporarily. Just a little. He used some red shop rags or something. I don't know. So we've got misfires on several cylinders. We've got voltage system faults. We've got various ancillary body system faults. The lights, the radio, the crap that nobody cares about, right? The champagne cooler.
Champagne cooler. It's not a 7 Series, man. Come on.
Don't drink and drive.
We've got no message received faults on various modules, and we have bit serial data message faults in the engine module, which is the DME for those of us that don't speak BMW. So I'm gonna try to throw some of the German acronyms at you guys today, right? Keep you in line. So inspection, we look, the coils and plugs are confirmed new. We didn't see any abnormalities. They were the right brand. The coils look to be reasonable.
Oh,
Auto light, Duralast, regular stuff.
Yeah, it's fine. Some used Champions, it was good. So whatever. Now what? Now what do we do? Well, this is when I get a tech support request for a possible direction and diagnosis. Okay, so now it gets to become partially my problem, right? So I get to lose a little more hair. So opposite of normal logic, I'm not going to go after the misfire because I suspect that's what everybody else has gone after, and that may be why they're failing. And this is why Jim Morton was getting mad at me, because I was kind of picking on him, but not really, because Jim was one of my mentors. So Jim is real big on getting in the funnel, right? You get up here and you work your way to the problem in the funnel. Unfortunately, a lot of times when you are second hand to the problem, it's not as easy to jump in the funnel. So sometimes I go a different direction than everybody else went just to see what I can find. Okay. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it's going to work. So I'm not necessarily interested in the ignition system. More concerning to me is what I believe is a possible voltage system issue. Well, why do I think I have a voltage system problem? Well, with my experience working on European cars, I've got voltage faults, I've got BSD faults, and I've got CAN bus message faults. All right. That's all German code or European code for you got a voltage problem. All right. So for those of you that don't know, BSD is a single wire data bus. It's called bit serial data, right? And it controls a couple of different things depending on the model, but typically it's an electric water pump because these cars utilize an electric coolant pump. It controls the intelligent battery sensor, which it uses for charging and recording of energy management on the car. It also runs the oil level sensor and the alternator, and it's bidirectional, and it's a continuous synchronous message. All right. The DME, or the engine control module, is the master of this little network here, and it's single wire. So the first thing I recommend is, well, if I think I got a voltage problem, I'm going to do some voltage system testing, right? So battery system test passes, the alternator test passes, but the battery tester flags the ripple as high. Okay, let's see what we're working with. So we grab a scope, we throw it on that AC ripple, and this is what we get. All right. So the AC ripple looks good. It looks good. It looks good. And then what the crap is that on the far right? That's some pretty significant interference.
Very rhythmic.
That's nothing.
No, it's fine.
That's
It was
nothing.
like that when it was new.
Yeah.
So, all right, maybe I'm onto something here. So knowing that the AC ripple has some sort of interference, I wonder if maybe that is what I'm picking up on the other networks and setting the faults. So we go after the BSD signal. Again, that BSD, that's that single wire network that's running the alternator. So maybe, it's going to the alternator. If the alternator's got an issue with ripple, maybe it's there. So sure as fact, there we go. We scope the BSD signal and we've got interference. But what do we notice about the interference? Anybody in my panel? You guys all
timed. I wasn't there, so let me answer.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Keith. I can't even see you, but go for it.
No, I mean, I literally haven't seen this. It's the first time I've seen it. I think the rest of the guys were there. So to me, it looks like it may be rhythmic, maybe with secondary ignition or some kind of timed
all right, so
variable.
I'll go with you. It looks rhythmic. It's definitely a repeating pattern. You can see it's even that it's happened. And it's not a continuous, it's a repeating rhythmic pattern.
It's also not all the time, but why? It's weird.
Exactly, right? So it's kind of an odd one. All right. So, we definitely have a problem, right? And we're on the case. But I'm not quite ready to start doing the Carlton just yet, right?
I just want to stop you there. That's literally the dance I do after I diagnose a car. Just saying.
So we're aware. We have a web camera set up at your desk, and you can't see it, but we can.
I'm doing that dance right now. You guys just can't see me. So.
Oh, okay. So at this point, we know we have repeating interference on our AC ripple coming out of the alternator. Otherwise, the AC ripple looked pretty decent. We're about 225 millivolts. And then we have it on the BSD communication, and it's repeating regularly, just like Keith and Brian said. It's repeating regularly. So we're not going to start the party yet, but what could possibly be causing the interference? What's a consistently repeating signal? I'm pretty sure Keith said it. If I'm not mistaken, Perkins, you said ignition, right?
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me.
Okay. So what if I told you that now the guy that's on the other end of the phone, which by the way is one of the better guys in documenting that I've ever worked with, says, okay, fine, I'll scope the ignition. So what we do is on channel C, we have ignition primary voltage. On channel B, which is our red trace, we have ignition current parade for all 6 cylinders. And channel A on our blue channel, we still have that BSD signal, that single wire interface, right? So what do we see there? Well, look, it's still repeating, but now it's timing up with something, right? It is timing up. So now I'm getting closer to doing my happy dance there, Martino, right?
I know you do the same dance.
I do, man. It's just straight off.
We're the same guy.
So if I back up, I've got my cylinder 1 trigger, right? So I can follow through the firing order. BMW 6-cylinder firing order since the beginning of time is 153624. So there we go. I graph it out. 153624. What do we see now? I still got another pattern. What's my pattern, Perkins?
It's one bank.
Yep, it's one bank. It's bank 2, right?
Yep.
So now I'm thinking, okay, cool. We're getting a heck of a lot closer. We're making progress, and unfortunately at some point I'm gonna have to call my buddy Fanslow and tell him, hey man, you missed it, man. You missed it somewhere.
I don't want to kill it, but is this an acquisition error?
It is not an acquisition error. This is 100% a legitimate problem.
Okay. I mean, for real, unfortunately I missed the tech talks, so this is all new to me. So this.
You're good.
Fun.
You're good. All right. So, well, I'm gonna have to ask you to hold your questions till the end, sir.
Okay.
So, at this point, believe it or not, I'm still hopeful that maybe Fanslow has just gotten a bad ignition coil. Right? We've all seen one bad ignition coil pull the network down. I'm thinking, man, maybe, just maybe.
Well, you got it from AutoZone, right, Matt?
Well, no,
Amazon.
I think. Yeah, Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Bought a whole set for like $18. So.
Good deal, man. Good deal.
Rock Auto's cheaper.
They're yellow.
Had it in 2 days.
So now that we're on top of it, right, and the source of that interference looks like it's in the ignition system, and we have misfires all on bank 2, right? Keith picked up on that. We had 4, 5, and 6 misfiring. We didn't know how the ignition system on the car works, and this kind of plays into what Chris was talking about, right? I can't diagnose crap if I don't know how it works. There's no possible way. So what I have is ignition coils that are all powered off of the same fuse. They're ground controlled directly by the engine control module. and there's a second ground on the ignition coil pack. And that second, yep, that extra ground is used to bleed off the excess voltage or a shunt ground. It's there to prevent interference.
You said shunt.
I did say shunt. It's such a fun word to say.
One of my favorite.
Mercedes uses it also, so I love it.
So now that I've given you the basis of the ignition system, it's direct current controlled off of the engine control module. We have a constant power source, and we have what looks to be a common ground point for this secondary ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to start investigating, right? Well, we've already scoped primary ignition voltage, and it was jazzed. I mean, it's I don't have a better word for it. It's just jazzed. It's off the screen. So what do we find, right? That interference shunt ground on bank 2 is loose, right? Let's see if the video actually plays this time. There it goes.
Just turn it more. Just turn it.
That's Chrysler tight right there. Oh, I see oil leak. Evidence of an oil leak.
I had my snap-on impact set to 5.
That's the previous oil leak that Fanslow fixed, and there's the new valve cover gasket that it got.
Oh yeah.
All right, so he did fix the oil leak. I told you he got the oil leak right, but
didn't clean it up when he was done either.
Yeah, I would say that yeah, well, you know, he was just ready to be divested of the vehicle, right? So what's the point of the case study other than this looks great on paper, right? This looks great. It was a good battle. I had fun doing it. The guy on the other end of the phone had doing it. Fanslow's hating life because now everybody on the internet thinks he's a hack, right?
I think they knew I was a hack
now?
before that.
Just now?
Oh, you know, I'm just throwing that out there. So what's the point of the story, right? Because there was a point to every story we did for Tech Talks. Sometimes, because a lot of us, especially most of the people that are watching this, find themselves to be in a situation where they're going behind someone else, whether they're going behind the customer, they're going behind another shop, or they're going behind 2 shops, or 3 guys that hung a shingle on their roof and called themselves mechanics, whatever it is. Sometimes you have to think outside the box, okay? And sometimes you have to go a different direction, right? And Jim, I still love you. I still use the funnel method a lot. Most every car I fix ultimately comes down to that. But sometimes you have to go a different direction, right? So frequently we hear about getting in that funnel or not getting sidetracked with the other issues during diagnosis of the specific problem. But sometimes it pays to spend a little bit of time and investigate the other issues that nobody thinks are related, because you might find that they are all linked together. Don't get trapped by just tracking that misfire. Look at the whole situation and find that unexpected interference.
Hey, Justin?
Yep.
Before, because I think you're reaching the end, but I think we skipped over a huge part. What was the problem?
The problem was that loose ground that in the video.
And why was the ground loose? Why was the ground loose?
The ground was loose because somebody did a valve cover gasket and they reused those 2 aluminum bolts that are aluminum stretch bolts.
And why is that bad?
Because they are aluminum stretch bolts, and what happens is they're now longer than the hole is deep.
Now,
that's what she said, Joe.
That's what she said. Now, if they would have listened, if they would have taken Chris's lesson to heart and read service information, would that have been in service information?
It is in service information, and you know,
that's how we tie it together.
funny story about that. Not only is it in service information, there's conveniently a sticker on the radiator core support that says if it's an aluminum bolt and you untorque it, throw it in the trash. Sorry, Matt.
Put a steel bolt in its place.
Signs are around for people that read them.
You just just need more washers.
I left the Amazon seller a 1-star review because they didn't send new bolts with the kit.
There you go. That's cool.
So I will do the devil's advocate for Jim here. I remember specifically one of the first class I ever took, Jim said that you should check the battery, charging system, and ripple in every car you ever touch because you will probably find problems before they exist.
Bingo. Keith, you know you're the only one that said that other than Jim.
Yeah.
You know, I picked on Jim a lot. He was a good sport about it, and I'm glad he was there because we needed somebody that we could pull in from the audience for some of these classes. And unfortunately, Jim sat up front, so he took a lot of it. But he's a champion of the industry, so he did a very good job taking it. But what I want everybody to realize is you don't want to get trapped. You know, sometimes you do have to open up your view and look at the entire vehicle, not just the one specific problem that the customer is complaining about. And I realize most of the time that's not the case. You can ignore the fact that the mirror doesn't work, right? But sometimes you do have to take it in there, and it does pay to spend 5 or 10 minutes investigating something different, especially if the car's been kicked around all over the place, right? So So once we got a new bolt, which by the way is $1.68 for the pair of those two bolts on top of the valve cover, this is what we were left with post fix. So it is not a sampling error, as you can see there, Keith. That was legitimate interference. There was a pretty substantial high voltage kickback, and it was creating interference all over the place.
That's something that I always take for granted, understanding an acquisition error. Me and myself and Bryn taught a Pico class in Colorado, and we were talking about all the different things that the students were going to run into. And then when it came to them actually doing it, we both had a group that had secondary ignition bleeding over into their acquisition, and they were freaked because we were doing, I think we were doing a ripple test, as what we were actually doing was a ripple test. And they were on inline 5-cylinder Chevy Colorados, and they had laid their wires over the coil. And we had two separate groups that had that, and neither of us thought of that. I'm like, I'm really glad you did this, because this happens to every new scope user.
You know, that's the signal acquisition thing. It happens more often than not. I just went through it the other day on the phone. Guys, like, every time I take a waveform, it looks like garbage. And I logged in and I looked and I said, by any chance, does the battery in your laptop stuck? And he goes, yeah. I said, so your laptop's always plugged into the wall? He goes, yeah. I go, there's your problem.
I think we had that problem too, didn't we, Bryn?
Yeah, I see that a lot, is the laptop battery.
And as regular scope users, it's something we tend to just overlook because we know that that's what we're used to seeing that. So it's like, oh yeah, that's just, well, let me move the cable real quick. Let me just unplug the laptop real quick. It's probably this. Yeah, there we go.
Bad USB cables are really common.
Cheap USB cables from CVS are also common.
Now, Justin, before we get off track a little bit, because I'm the king of getting off track, how did this kill the ECM?
It did not kill the DME, and Adrian just asked, and I was going to approach that in a second. Adrian, it's dumb luck it didn't kill the DME. There was enough of a ground path that it pushed the limit. Now, also, this is an MSV 70, and they're not super detrimental. They'll take a pretty good whipping for this kind of thing.
It's a Wednesday DME.
Yeah, they will take zero water. Dusty. Yeah, they will take zero water, but for whatever reason, this DME survived, and it did have a certain amount of ground. And if you remember, this was an intermittent problem. So what I suspect is when the ground rested in the right spot, it was working. And then when you took off, because it had, 14-year-old, 160,000 mile fourth owner motor mounts, that it moved just enough that it would cause the misfire and stumble. And it may have been dumb luck that we were seeing as much interference as we were, but we ran with what we had, and we didn't move the car until we had it fixed. So that was a good question, Adrian. But yeah, this is a pretty big issue with BMW, with people leaving those bolts out, and it ultimately hurting the engine control module, killed it. So my big thing is everybody brought one piece to this Tech Talks, and it turned out really, really well. But my one piece was think outside the box. Okay. If the car gets dropped off and you have a stack of receipts from other places that it's been, or a parts receipt list from the customer trying to tackle them themselves, you might want to go a slightly different direction than everybody else has gone. Don't follow that pack. Go a different direction. It may get you exactly where you need to be. Don't spend all day there, but it's worth the 10 or 15 minutes to investigate it. So,
and just to hop in on that, Justin, real quick, the most important part about being able to think outside of the box is knowing the system well enough to know what the box is to begin with.
You're exactly right. And that's, if I don't know if you noticed, but in my presentation, there's a pretty good breakdown of everything we're talking about. And it's, again, just like you talked about in yours, if you don't understand how it works, the only way you are going to get it fixed is good guess or dumb luck. That's the only way it's going to happen. And I don't care if you're fixing a wheelbarrow or if you're fixing a BMW. If you don't know how it works, it's not going to work out in your favor most of the time.
And Justin, just to add, you said something in Kansas that I thought was great. You said, and I don't know if you repeated it here, but you said we have to take a holistic approach to repairing cars, that we have to look at the whole picture sometimes. That yeah, sometimes you have to focus on all of the codes, all of the modules, the total system scan, instead of just let's go after that misfire.
I did make a pretty big deal out of that, Rich, when we were in Kansas, that, for the most part, most of the trade has figured out that you can't just scan one module. You're going to have to scan the whole car. And it doesn't matter if it's a BMW or anything else.
We would hope that most have figured that out.
But it does bear repeating, because apparently there's some guys in the very, very back that still haven't figured it out. You must scan the entire car. I don't care what it's in the shop for, scan the whole car. If there is a complaint that requires any sort of scan tool to be hooked up, you're not looking that much more time. You can start doing your visual inspection while it's doing a quick test. You don't have to stand there and watch the screen scroll. Maximize your time. Go pop the hood, do your visual, rack the car, whatever you're going to do, put the battery charger on it. You verbalize that very well. Holistic approach to the car. I say look at it in its entirety, but holistic is a great word. I'm like Chris. I like words that summarize things.
Interdependence.
Yes, right. Don't get trapped in the box. And then again, this is just a case study about this. This probably is not a super common thing to happen. And actually, I'm lying. It is. This is pretty common to happen. But the way this one played out, with it having been from one shop to another shop. Now, total disclaimer. My friend Matt Fanslow down there on the bottom was very, very good about letting me throw him under the bus. Matt in no way, shape, or form had anything to do with this car, because apparently if I don't say that, the internet dies and they think that Matt Fanslow is the biggest hack in the world.
I don't believe you.
It still is.
Fanslow and I are 1,600 miles apart. All right. The only way that car was worked on by him is if it got put on the back of a flatbed and driven across the Mississippi and then further south. Okay. It's the only way it was happening.
It did cause a few interesting conversations at the Pico booth and AES Wave booth. I'll tell you that.
It really did.
That's funny.
So,
very cool. Thank you. That was awesome.
It was very cool.
Even better the second time around. I learned.
I don't know about better, but it might have been funnier. I don't know.
It's funny because I taught a class yesterday. I watched these two tech talks, and I looked at a video the other day, and everything has to do with read the service information, understand how it works, and try to think outside the box, at least to some degree. So it is pretty.
Keith, I'm not going to cut you off, but somebody on the chat just asked a question, Nick. So the car had a misfire before it was worked on by Fanslow, and it had a misfire that if we go back, actually, let me go back to screen share here real quick.
Yeah, so it needed plugs, and they screwed that up.
Yeah, it had two problems, exactly.
Yeah.
So
well, they created a problem by fixing one, so that's why it changed.
Exactly. So it did have a misfire on the original complaint when it was at Fanslow's shop, right? And then the customer even stated on the repair order that if anything, it's worse now. So my guess is that it had a legit misfire, and he did a valve cover as a follow-up with the oil leak. Maybe
Matt Opposite fixed it.
Yeah, he opposite fixed it. He fixed it, and then he unfixed it, right? So he put it back at base zero, right? So
we call that the South Carolina fix. Just saying.
Whoa, whoa.
Oh. Anyways, Mike the mechanic says, Justin, how much real time did this take to diagnose?
Real time diagnosis, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Not bad.
What took you so long?
Phone calls back and forth. I can't stay on the. I can't. You know how the tech support game is. You can't stay on the phone forever with one guy. You gotta lay something down and move on to the next one and then go back. You gotta balance. Right?
No, man, I do one at a time. If it's 3 hours, it's 3 hours.
No.
But I suck, so it's okay. Everything takes me 3 hours.
No, going back and forth with a customer, getting the captures and everything, and having discussions on the phone. I think we were right at about 2 hours total time work, probably 8 hours of actual case, but with real only 2 hours of work involved, just back and forth. Thought I saw one more question.
How long after you got that capture with the noise and the ripple, were you like, you know what, that looks like ignition?
Realistically, Almost immediately. I was like, damn, I know what this is.
And then the one bank thing kind of seals the deal.
Yeah, once I got the ignition captures, I was like, we're done. That's a wrap. This is where it's going to be. It's becoming common. As these cars get older, more and more people are venturing to work on them. And again, like Chris has said multiple times, if you're going to work on the car, removing bolts and replacing bolts for a valve cover gasket seems simple. But on this particular engine, all those bolts are aluminum and they are one-time use. They are torque to yield stretched and they are 6 and 7 millimeter diameter bolts. So they stretch a lot.
Also, as useless, by the way. Just no real reason for that.
Anyway. No, because isn't the engine magnesium and like.
So the engine. So there's some misconceptions there. BMW's argument is they were trying to prevent dissimilar metal corrosion. Because it is a magnesium aluminum silicate block. All right. Here's the real deal. They were trying everything they could, every trick in the book to make this engine as light as possible to get the extra CAFE points like everybody else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If they could have figured out how
to car parts.
If they could have figured out how to make those bolts out of plastic, they'd have been made out of plastic. Okay. But they knew that BMW plastic sucks, and that was never going to work. So
try Velcro next
especially if it ever touches coolant.
Yeah, so they went with a yeah, right. So they went with a coated aluminum, and that was just as piss of a design. So it didn't take them long to abandon that design and go to a coated steel bolt. But then we went to a plastic valve cover, which it balances out, so it still leaks like you wouldn't believe. But yeah, Keith, I get you. It was a dumb idea. It really was, and
I feel like
it was just a numbers game.
For worse plastic.
But it worked out so well on the cam gear.
Believe it or not, though, we had pretty much abandoned aluminum bolts by the time we had that problem.
It makes anybody feel any better. When I was working on Caterpillar stuff regularly, we had torque to yield head bolts, 325 to 375 foot-pounds, depending. I used to see them get reused every single day, and those things would stretch like 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, depending on who was hammering it in with the 3/4 inch impact.
Nice.
You'd get something in for its 3rd or 4th head gasket failure, and you'd start measuring the bolts. And
Chris, you got away without having to do a real intro here in a way. But I think about let's say 8 months ago, you weren't working on cars.
No.
As a profession.
Chipotle, right? I'm kidding.
Which is still essential, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of dove into this, head on.
Yeah, I started out, let's see, first job was a golf course working on small equipment, cutting grass, then got into automotive, left automotive, went to Caterpillar, then went to HVAC, then went to John Deere, and then finally came back into automotive. I've kind of bounced around a little bit everywhere.
And throughout all that thought process and that goal to find a solution in your mind map, as you said, or your mental map. Yeah, that was in effect in everything that you did.
Yeah, that's because I was the dummy who would take on something that nobody else would ever possibly take on. And so you'd find yourself in a situation, and if all you've got is the service manual because it's 2:00 in the morning and nobody's answering the phone, you either sink or swim.
That's where you get really good, though, is sink and swim and trial by fire, though.
Yep.
Or
Absolutely.
just plugging stuff in and hoping you don't short anything out worse than it was before.
Yeah, that doesn't work out too well for me. That normally results in gray smoke and lots of it.
Yeah, but that was a pre-existing condition.
Yeah, it needed that computer.
Yeah, if it didn't, it needs it now.
Yeah,
What about
it wasn't
the
like
third
it wasn't like the agricultural stuff wasn't sophisticated anyways, right? It's pretty hardcore.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's one of these days when John Deere stops giving me cease and desist letters, I'll actually release the case study on it. DEF dosing module. I kept getting codes on a skid steer for DEF concentration too high. So for those not familiar with final tier 4 emissions on diesels, 32.5% urea, generally plus or minus 2% is the spec. Now, everything John Deere says, everything that was actually a Bosch after treatment system says, is that the only thing that will affect the DEF quality PID, and the only thing that can read it, is the in-tank sonar sensor. So I checked everything I could. It's a self-contained unit. It's got sonar, level, and temperature all built in, and you have can high, can low, power, and ground. That's all you can check to it directly. Check all that, replace the tank header unit, because that's what the factory says, it's under warranty. Same issue. So I spent 2-3 days with it. I was reading patent applications. I pulled the actual manufacturer number off the tank header unit, everything else. And long story short, I ended up finding out that if you have a clogged DEF injector and your NOx conversion efficiency is not exactly what it expects, or you're converting NOx too efficiently, it will actually then change the data PID for your DEF urea concentration or your DEF concentration. So, I mean, there's you can get pretty complex pretty quickly. And the downside with HD and off-road, basically J1939 standard in general, is all of the OEMs assume the technicians are idiots. And their test plans are 10 times worse than anything I've ever seen in automotive. I was in John Deere Master Tech training, and I forget the exact code, but it was an engine overheat concern on a combine. And they had us go through the steps. This is a webinar training, right? Step 1, pull codes. Okay, I agree with that. Step 2, reflash ECM. Not so much. C, disconnect from the ECM and from the engine coolant temperature sensor, do a resistance test through the harness. Step 4, replace coolant temperature sensor. Step 5, replace ECM. Step 6, replace wire harness. Step 7, and I kid you not, this is step 7. After replacing all this stuff, check coolant level in the radiator. Step 8, check accessory drive belt and fan condition. And I'm sitting there, and I thought this whole thing was a joke, which apparently it was not. They were quite serious that those were the steps that needed to be taken. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the.
Sorry.
My grandpa owned a farm implement dealer, and I remember in the mid '80s, Massey Ferguson had wheel slip control where it used radar for your actual ground speed, and then you could set the wheel slip. You know, this is mid '80s.
Oh yeah, Massey was up there for quite a while. We actually had they were 5,000 and 6,000 series, so small agricultural tractors. We had a lot of guys having problems with them. They were running balers on rolling meadows, and same thing. As soon as you would pop this thing into neutral, it didn't have a true parking brake. So if it's all any wheel speed whatsoever, it assumed a rearward slip, hammered the hydraulic brakes on right away. A little more advanced than the radar systems Massey was using, but same thing. I mean, I had guys who had to run around with a front loader on just to bale hay because the system was actually too complex. It would be within about a 32nd of a revolution of the wheel, this thing would hammer the brakes on. So we're talking maybe an inch or two of backwards roll, if that. And it would not let you power brake it or dump the clutch or anything else. It's kind of frustrating at times.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get us off topic there. So what do we have next?
I think that was it.
Besides Brandon's curtains, because they're always so perfectly straight. You know? I think he irons them.
He's afraid to touch them.
No, it was a good night.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's 2 hours.
That was a tight hour, guys. That was a real tight hour.
It was close. We were right there.
Yep.
Well, I guess that's it. I think we should wrap it up. Don't forget on the website, there's a more tab and then is it web training? Is that what it says?
Web-based training. Yeah.
Web-based training. There's a calendar with a ton of free webinars that every company is putting on right now.
Yeah, if you
And
go,
when
if
you
you go,
click
if you
those
go,
links and you can be like the 15th Brian Colada on a webinar. Pretty awesome.
no. That's all been fixed. All
Yeah,
right.
we fixed
If
that.
you go to the main page, there are 4 options to choose from. One of them says web-based training. If you click on that, you'll pull up another tab, and then there will be a calendar with a bunch of links on the calendar, and they all have been corrected where the links are not unique to me. So when you click on them, they should no longer be registered to me. So
That's a bummer. I was looking forward to getting you in trouble.
it was interesting seeing the list on the chat with there's like 20 of me.
Yeah, tomorrow I was planning on just renaming everybody Larry, Moe, Curly, or something. But hopefully
On a
that'll be
serious note,
fixed.
though, Brian, you've done a great job making sure everybody knows about that training. You've probably got hours in keeping that calendar up to date, and he's got everybody on there. So anybody that's watching and doesn't know about it, anybody watches this tomorrow, whenever you wake up, be aware Brian's got training for every company that's putting it out there.
Every company but mine.
Like CTI tomorrow night.
Well,
Oh, you did?
Keith, if I'm not mistaken, I believe last week you mentioned something about not having half your own stuff up on your own website. So
Yeah.
just saying.
Yeah. I did fix that. I
also-
put a free training tab. There's like 10 or 12 free training videos now on the website. There's all, yeah. I put all of it up there.
Brian,
Also-
it's been super easy to just tell guys, hey, look, go to the Train by Text website. Brian's got everything up there. He's done a good job with it. So, if nobody's told you thank you about that, I'm gonna go ahead and throw one at you, buddy.
I appreciate that. And if anyone knows of any webinars that may not be on there, please send us a message, send me a message, whatever. Let me know, and I'll make
If
sure.
any of the links don't work, let us know.
Yeah, I'm going to put this in front of everyone's face real quick so they can see this. This is the calendar. You guys can't see that, but Facebook can see it. Or, I mean, YouTube can see it. There are 4, looks like at least 4 every day for the entire week. And there's 2 to 3 a day next week, and so on and so on. So
Yeah, this was the after party for Jeremy O'Neill's service advisor skills during COVID. So
Yep.
There's a lot of good stuff out there. It's been a lot of fun. Like
There's like 97 webinars for the next 3 days.
Yeah, it's
Get some.
insane. We can't keep up. We've been trying to plan ours. We've got some stuff coming out, and we're like, oh, we'll slot up. Nope, that slot's taken. Oh,
Yeah,
no, that
it's
one's
tough.
taken too. It's
you
like,
guys were on last week, weren't you, Justin? The Pico
yeah,
skill?
last week I pulled a 2-nighter for Pico Basics, which coincidentally I didn't realize, but we were on top of Brian Mann doing the same thing, which I think he was doing advanced. Luckily, thank you.
yeah, there were six webinars last Wednesday when you were doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Brian,
it was crazy. It was crazy.
I was like, oh God.
We've got some more stuff coming out. We're working on a basic BMW webinar. I say basic.
It's like 14
we're
hours,
calling
right?
it. Well, we're calling it BMW 101. It's for guys that are starting to see the cars in the shop. They don't know the terminology. They don't know the chassis numbers. They don't know what stuff's called in service information. It is the 101 to get into working on the stuff.
Are you teaching it, or is
Whichever one of us is still standing. These 18-hour days are catching up to us pretty quick right now. So
Yeah.
as most of us are aware, I think Tommy was complaining about that earlier. I think he's still sore.
is Brian got that link on the website yet?
which one?
No, we haven't finalized anything yet. As soon as we
it's like
do,
a-
I'll be sure to let him know. But we haven't. We're still trying to find somewhere to slide it in where we're not going to be fighting with everybody else.
It's
So-
at 2 in the, it's 2 in the
Sunday
morning.
at 10 a.m.
Yeah, I'm thinking 6:30 in the morning East Coast ought to be just fine.
That's
So-
fine for me. I'm up anyways.
Yeah, same here.
I just want to say, by the way, that I know for sure that Fanslow would have had that BMW fixed in like an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah,
If
It
I'd
is
have
what
called
it is.
Opus.
Listen, heyday, I was pretty good with moving fast on flat rate mechanical repair. I've always been kind of over the top when it comes to diag. I like to make sure stuff is broken.
Right.
I was comfortable with 2 hours. I'd have been comfortable with 2 hours if that sucker was sitting in front of me on the bay and I'd never seen that problem before. So
Dude, I've been high-fiving everyone, strangers, even COVID or not, man.
it's
There you go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
there's the high five. I don't feel so bad. I spent 5 and a half, 6 hours on a
Is that
99
high-fiving?
Mustang the
Yeah,
other day.
that's
so-
clapping, but it's close. It's better than this.
All right, guys. It's like 10:45, and I would like to, get out of my work clothes.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah,
You're
me
just gonna
too.
put them back on again in the morning, sleep in them, then you save yourself 15 minutes.
There you go.
Well, we just put the training tab in the chat. We'll make sure that there's a link to that in the description as well. But everyone, please stay safe. Practice good personal hygiene and protection, all of the stuff around you. Make sure to disinfect everything. If it's wet and not yours, don't touch it. Yeah.
And also the link in the description. Click it. Have fun.
Yes.
Enjoy yourselves.
Yes, take the
Take
all of the
advantage the
things.
free trial.
take the free
Yeah.
trial. I
Free
mean,
is
even if
for
all
me.
you do is take the free trial and then you run, just use it. Abuse
Is
it.
there anywhere else I can put that link, Chris? Like
No, that's special. That's special for us.
Okay, so this is one-time shot here. All right.
That's it.
Okay, cool. All
Thank
right,
you
ladies and
guys
gents.
joining us.
Thank
Matt,
you.
Matt,
It's been fun,
we
guys.
want
Thanks
you,
for having me.
Yeah.
Matt, we want you on every time. It's a lot of fun beating you up. So come on back.
Just
I
what,
don't
just
fight
what we
back.
need is a resident punching bag. I thought that was me.
Yeah.
Be honored.
Speaking of which, where's Mike Robinson?
All right, guys. Have a good night. I'm ending the stream.
Yeah.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks
ya.
for coming,
Everybody.
guys.
Thanks.